we have all from the Chicago Sun-Times, Fran Spielman, Ogden Polish, Mary Mitchell, Carol Marine, and Mark Brown. Round of applause. Why don't we start off, each panelist take around 5 minutes or less, and sort of give your overall, I hate that word impression because you're going to start, making faces. Your overall view of how Rahm Emanuel has done in the first 100 days, or anything else you want to talk about, because this is the City Club. Fran Spielman, round of applause, please.
First off, I need to apologize for my voice. I'm doing my Lauren Bacall imitation, and this says, there's no truth to the rumor that Mayor Emanuel had something to do with this. I think that Chicago is very fortunate at this time with the kinds of problems, the unbelievable problems that we face, to have someone of Mayor Emanuel's intellect and energy and formidable contacts and even his ego, really, because the problems are so humongous that you need someone bigger than life to tackle them. You need someone who can call not only the president, but a CEO and get that person on the phone and maybe hammer them a little about trying to bring jobs to Chicago. I don't mean to suggest for a minute that the 4,600 jobs, or whatever the running count is, that Mayor Emanuel claims have been brought to Chicago since he came, are his singular responsibility, and that he deserves the credit for all those. But do I think that he has the ability to hammer a CEO that he's known for years and ask them to please, when they're thinking about expanding, why not consider Chicago? Absolutely. I think that it might turn out to be a major mistake to have used that cloud to get the G8 and NATO, because I fear for what could happen. I fear for whether we have the police to handle such a thing. I wonder what it will be like, and how I think about how long it took for the city to erase those ugly memories of '68, and how Mayor Daley finally in 1996 staged a flawless Democratic convention to finally write a new chapter. And God forbid if something happens and we don't have the police, or if something happens elsewhere outside the downtown area during that time, it could turn out to be a mistake. The mayor argues that this is the Olympics without the athletes, and I guess an argument can be made that this will showcase Chicago, but if it showcases Chicago negatively, then it's not worth the trouble. I do believe that so much of the challenge is ahead of him. The easy stuff has gone on. He has picked the low fruit off the trees and done the easy stuff. He's called in the credit cards and the take-home cars, and he has changed some of the ethics policies, and certainly taking on the unions and trying to jawbone for work rule changes, which he's been unsuccessful about, but getting the unions to agree finally to managed competition as a model going forward, where city employees will compete with private sector, and the best man wins, whoever provides the service for the lowest possible cost. That will all benefit the city going forward. But humongous challenges lie ahead in terms of how is he going to erase the $635 million shortfall after boxing himself in and saying, I won't raise taxes, I won't cut police, and I won't use one-time revenues. Well, how is he going to do it, and what kind of a city government will we have left? The police and fire contracts expire on June 30th. That's another enormous thing that's ahead, and I think those will be very rocky. The school budget only gets worse in the next coming years with, a pension holiday is going to expire. So I think he's done well initially on the easy stuff. He has set the right tone, but the most important challenges lie ahead.
Thank you very much, Brandon. By the way, all of you probably will not be very upbeat, so for those of you we do have a special feature. If you raise your hand at the end of the day, you can have a small vial of hemlock. So just in case you don't want to really face all this and deal with the problem, you can just end it right now. Anthony, you're up next.
And what Grant's saying about Rahm, I've been so impressed with these. Every week he seems he takes off his magician's top hat and reaches in there and pulls out a commitment from one of his CEO buddies for another 200, 300 jobs coming to Chicago. And I'm wondering how deep this top hat is. And can he keep doing this every week for the next 4 years until he, declares for president in the 2016 primary. And I think at some point, he'll hit bottom there, but it's great while it lasts. Just talking to average voters, I find a whole lot of enthusiasm for Rahm. He's hit the ground running 180 miles an hour. There's all these new initiatives. So I think the honeymoon is still going strong. 100 days and we're at 107, 108 now. But us being in the media, we like to focus on the negative. So I thought I'd lead off with the criticism. I think he sent a tone-deaf message by killing the 4% raise for the teachers at the same time that he gave double-digit raises to the school administrators who were sending in to replace the already generously paid school administrators from the previous administration. And I understand exactly why he did it. He wants to crack open the contract so he can get those extra 90 minutes in the school day right now. And the teachers aren't willing to open the contract. That means that he gets to take that 4% raise. That's $100 million you can spend on laptops or whatever. So it's from a negotiating point of view, it's a great win-win situation for him. My fear is that you kill the morale of the teachers, and these are your frontline people who, when you want to make school reform work, they're the ones you need. And I've always felt, long before I married a teacher, I believe that teachers are, my mom's a teacher, my sister's a teacher. I really think that, people that are willing to get up every morning and go face 30, 35 kids, and then my kids go to the Chicago Public Schools, so don't tell me there's no 35 kid classrooms, I've been in them. And a lot of these kids come from situations where the parents are in no position to help them with their homework or be encouraging. And you've got to take these kids and get them enthusiastic about academics. I really think that is the Lord's work they're doing every day. It's more important than anything we're doing here. Apologies to any surgeons or clergy in the room. And I think they should be very well paid for it. So do we need shock therapy in the Chicago Public Schools? Absolutely. But you don't want to electrocute your frontline workforce that you're going to need to make this all work. And I think one thing, we can talk about Rahm here, instead of saying Mayor Emanuel. Rahm is one syllable, Mayor Emanuel is 6 syllables, and it doesn't mean we're being disrespectful or implying, drinking buddy status. Rahm is a Hebrew word for high or lofty or supreme, so it's a built-in term of respect here. He doesn't seem to mind that he calls me Captain, sometimes more annoyance in his voice than others, depending on the question I've asked. Captain is a Farsi word meaning servant of all, as I am to all of you for 75 cents a day. So, one thing I've been very impressed with is this tightrope that Rahm's able to walk, where he says, Mayor Daley was such a great mayor, and without his vision, we wouldn't be here, and he's done such a great job in the city. And on the other hand, say, this city is on the edge of the cliff, we're about to fall into the rest of this. We need to drastically change everything we've been doing. We've got to stop kicking this can down the road like we've been doing for 20 years, without any sense of irony, or mentioning the toe prints on that can for Mayor Daley. And it falls to us in the media here to point out the irony. What else we got? So these the TIFs, the tax increment financing. He started the committee to look into this, and it's impressive so far. But I think only when the first tax increment financing district that has not been justified as in an unblighted neighborhood is actually sunset. I think that's when they'll start to get the credit that will be due for reforming the TIFs. You can go online now, see more city salaries. There's more transparency. The bike lanes. I've enjoyed reading my Pulitzer Prize-winning colleague Mark Kunkel's columns about the bike lane that they put up between our office and the East Bank Club, where coincidentally Mayor Emanuel works out. And I could be selfish and say, hey, that's taking my escape route out of downtown. But in the long run, I think that clearly it's better off if these multiply and we all get healthier. And it's one less excuse for me not to ride my bike into work now that it comes right into the office. I think the thing is I wear the suit every day, so you don't want to stand next to me after I've ridden in from Jefferson Park in a suit and tie. I think the solution is my editors need to let me expense a membership with the East Bank Club so I can ride the bike and shower there and chat with Rahm in the morning. So I've talked to some of the state stop Republicans. Some of them are here, would say that Rahm has been the best Republican mayor the city of Chicago ever had. Is getting away with things that no Republican ever could in dealing with the unions. Plenty more to say, but that's a start.
Okay, round of applause. This is the City Club where we have the golden rules. He has to go and make the rules, so therefore I will break my rule that I just said at the beginning because I was remiss. We do have a state official. Who else? Dan, where are you? Raise your hand. The state treasurer, Dan Rutherford. The pride and joy of West Suburbia, the woman who put Berwyn on the town, the state controller, Judy Bartopin. Mary.
Thank you very much. I would have to say that the difference with Mayor Emanuel is that it's like having a sort of bunny rabbit. You know, they're over here, they're over there, they're down there, they're spreading over here. It's kind of hard to keep up with him. Mayor Daley, on the other hand, was like a bulldog in that office. But Mayor Emanuel, you know, he loves the job so much that he throws open the door and he wants everybody to come in and he wants everybody to see exactly what's going on, because you know what? He doesn't have anything to hide. And if he did have something to hide, he is running too fast. It'll be a long time before we catch up to him. But he brings with him a personal touch to City Hall that we just haven't seen in a very, very long time. I told him recently, because he invited me to come over, believe it or not, to City Hall and sit down and have a conversation. And I said I'd had more conversations with Mayor Emanuel in his first 100 days than I ever had with Mayor Daley in decades. And I covered City Hall. So he has the personality for the job, and he's taking that personality. You know, there are all the things they're going to talk about, the education, the firefighters, the police, the teachers. He has all that too, but he has something else. He has that human touch that allows him to get on the brown line and come to work. That allows him to go over to the red line, which I don't even want to go to the red line. But get on the red line and ride the red line and talk to people and actually find out how people are feeling. He phones the victims, the relatives of the homicides we had in our city. And he phones those relatives, whether that person was killed in a drug-related or gang-related killing, or an innocent victim like a 6-year-old girl who just gets killed because there's gunfire on her street, or she happens to be in a household where people are not doing the correct things. He phones the family anyway because he has that human touch. He is using that human touch really to, I think, offset some of the challenges that's coming down the road. For instance, in the African American community, yes, they're dealing with very, very high homicide rates, but they're dealing with very high unemployment rates too. So when there is a city crisis budget in which African American city workers are going to lose their jobs, that's going to fall on his desk. That's going to fall on his head. We can talk about the trade unions and everything he's doing to make trade unions more accountable. But in the African American community, people are still asking the same question: why is it that when I walk past these work sites, I never see a black man working? And that's the hardest thing to tackle. The easy to tackle, comparatively speaking, it's easy to tackle the union going to get more money for its employees. It's hard to tackle why aren't people working. The other thing I would say about his leadership within the first 100 days is that he is introducing us to emerging black leadership. And I think that is a very, very good thing for the community that I cover. He started that with his campaign by kind of sidestepping entrenched leadership, so to speak, and bringing some new faces to the table. So now when we read the paper about new appointments or new committees, you're seeing new names. New names are popping up. Names like Melinda Kelly. And this is a young lady that I met covering Chatham and the Chatham Business Association. We need that because these are the people who are going to be at the forefront of rebuilding and helping to rebuild distressed communities. Finally, I would say that what we have to watch for and what I have to watch for, and I think the media has to be aware of, is that we don't want too much wrong. And right now, that's what we're having. We got a honeymoon, and you know how it is on honeymoons, you know. Everybody want to get together. Well, sometimes it's a little bit too much. And when I look at the paper and see that, you know, on June 22nd, he was in there 3 times, 3 separate stories. A week later, 3 separate stories. Then another week, 4 separate stories in one day. Or another day, 3 stories. Or 4 stories where his name is prominent. That's just too much wrong. Because while we're following Mayor Rahm, and going to all those press conferences, things may be going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And I think that's what we have to guard about. We like him, but we don't want to love him too much.
By the way, if you have a question, we have a couple. Miss Ginny is somewhere around, right here, as I said, somewhere. And she will come by and pick up the question. Now we have the... Carol Marie, I have so many great lines, but then again, maybe you wouldn't think so. So
don't
Carol
use
Marie,
them. Don't use them.
We always start off with a round of applause.
I agree with Mary for about 50% of what she said. And that 50% deals with the fact that there is the Rahm Emanuel, who is a great communicator, who is a larger-than-life presence, who has extraordinary energy, and has a really excellent intellect. Where I disagree, or where I would draw a distinction, is I think that in controlling the narrative for the last 100 days, and he truly has, the fact of the matter is that we've seen very little of sort of the complexity of what's underneath those 100 days. Franny says, you know, he picked off the low-hanging fruit. He has done some positive things. You go to those 4 press conferences that we cover in one day, and the stagecraft is so controlled that you get maybe 3 questions, sort of pre-planned, and there is very little pushback allowed in terms of probing the answer. Emanuel is a genius at numerology. If he tells you something, he'll tell it to you this way. I have 5 points. If you get into the second point and say, but wait, you haven't let me finish my 3 points. By that time, the filibuster is over, the time is up, and you're done. So I think that what in some ways that is a parable of whether there is anyone in city government, any other voice in city government, I look to the city council with hope but mostly dismay, at the possibility that there is in fact going to be a kind of democratic conversation here. I think the city needed the energy that he is bringing. I think it needs the sort of complete commitment that he is offering, but there is nothing about Rahm Emanuel that isn't compound complex. Take the G8 summit that concerns Fran with regard to whether something bad will happen. Part of the orchestration of the G8 summit, I would argue, in addition to having sort of Olympics without athletes, is it carefully and beautifully dovetails into the amp up to the Labor Day into the presidential election. It is a profoundly beautiful showcase for Barack Obama, which is part of the conversation here. We're talking about people who see things in political, economic, strategic kinds of terms. And so the G8 may be very good for Chicago, but it also has all sorts of political dynamics that I don't think you can ignore. By having said all of that, then you take us into state government, you take us into the casino bill, as an example. Governor Quinn, whatever you may say about him, pro or con, is the governor. You've got 2 houses in Springfield. You have legislation that Emanuel may favor, but I don't know that the same sort of style that Emanuel has demonstrated with unions and with other organizations where he is sort of laying the agenda works in Springfield. I do not necessarily believe that beyond 100 days, into the 300 days, or into the second year, that public officials have the capacity to continue to bully other public officials and get something done in our behalf. So my question really to him is one of whether or not there's going to be some sort of collaboration and consensus as part of what he's doing, as opposed to sort of the dictates of what he believes is the rightness of what he's doing, which takes me finally to the unions. What concerns me, and you know, full disclosure, I was briefly a teacher. I am a union member. And I do wonder, when is a contract in this country anymore? Not just in the city of Chicago, but in the nation as a whole. In my own view, in the fight with the teachers union, and as Abden points out, with the fact that executives who have not yet performed to improve the system have been rewarded beyond the ones they replace, that there is a kind of upstairs, downstairs of the workers versus the executives, that mid-level and upper-level management of city government. I don't think you can continue to vilify the teachers. If I were a young woman coming out of college right now, I think the last thing I'd want to be in the city of Chicago is a teacher, because we are giving them no respect. And at some point, you know, we have to admit that they are the portal to these children who desperately need them. And so again, it takes me to a question of consensus and collaboration. You can't always achieve it. Somebody's got to be the boss. Ultimately, at the end of the day, a decision has to be made. But stylistically, I have questions about whether this intense 100 days stylistically is going to survive for 4 years.
Banning, next, last, but not necessarily in that order, Mark Brown. Round of applause.
I think most of the people in this room know that the 100 days passed maybe 15, 20 days ago now. And there were stories in the paper, and I wrote a column. My column said that the new mayor was off to a decent start, and I was kind of embarrassed to write a column like that, because I sometimes over in the apparel center now, and I'm walking through the merchandise mart a couple days later, and I see a ward committeeman from the Northwest side, and he says, "So what are you, an apologist for the mayor now?" So I'm still feeling guilty of all that. So I'm glad that we've had another 20 days run, because if you've noticed, he's run into a few problems in the next 20 days. And he was very, as it's been pointed out, he was very intent on marking the 100 days. You know, I'm sure he knew there'd be stories anyhow, but he had a press conference. The press conference would, up behind us would have been 2 big charts with things that he may or may not have committed to doing, but every one of them was checked off. They never let us have a copy of that, so we could go back through and check them out. But look at what's happened since. I'd say the thing that I'm most concerned about is this business over the weekend. I'm very supportive of the longer school day. I think that was a good idea of his. I believe that the key is how you fill that longer school day. I'm sure he knows that at some level, but his promise is for the longer school day, so goddamn, he's going to deliver the longer school day. So then he picks off 3 schools and gets the teachers, a majority of the teachers, not, to vote to go outside their contract. He's starting to play with union busting here, in my opinion, and yeah, I'm a union guy too. And I've been supportive of a lot of the things he's done here to go up against the unions, but he's starting to stray into some, territory that, So the schools that agree to the longer school day, they're going to get financial incentives to do that. As the teachers union points out, so what are the kids at the other schools supposed to think? That they're not, that it's their teachers that are holding them back? It's a bad business. Then there was, Frank, Maine and Fran broke the story about him having to bring McCarthy in to tell him what the real numbers are on the police budget. You know, they're going to have to cut $200 million there. You know, pretty soon, I mean, the problems he faces, he's quickly coming up against the reality of everything he wants to do, and the money numbers just aren't going to allow him to do it. Then, you know, we've got the casino bill. I thought it was a great thing for him to go down into Springfield this year and re-engage with the legislature. Mayor Daley did that in his first few years, maybe his first term. Then he just got sick of going, you know, he got sick of dealing with those guys. He was beyond that at his point in his career, I think. And a mayor of Chicago can do the city a lot of good by going down there. They like it. You know, I mean, guys from downstate like to know the mayor of Chicago. He can bring some stuff back here. And he got his school reform bill, and he got his casino bill. Well, the problem was the casino bill, it's a bad bill. He overreached. There's just too much in it. And now he's in a fight with the governor, which I see no real good coming to that. Also, we had his TIF reform announcement here last week, the week before. You know, it doesn't really reform the TIFs. We're going to keep going. I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room are happy with that, but we're going to keep on going with the TIFs the way we have. And you know, it's going to be more open. It's going to be more transparent. But they're still going to spend the money the same way that they have. You know, transparency. You know, we in the media only can take transparency so far. I mean, people that don't want to read about TIFs aren't going to want to read about them just because we can tell them more.
It's gone from a secretive slush fund to a transparent slush fund.
TIFs aren't sexy.
Let me read it.
Well, you get the comments. Round of applause. There you go. Showing considerable restraint, I will avoid commenting on any of that, especially dealing with union contracts. There's a big difference between a public union and a private union. I said I wouldn't, and I'm going to do it. Okay. Private union, you're dealing with a corporation or a company. Public union, you're dealing with the taxpayers. All right, we can move on. First question from me. That was just a prologue. This is for all of you. You have 20 seconds to come up with an answer. Frank, I want you to go first this time because you went first last time. We'll start with Mark and go right on the line. Question: who do you think will be the first alderman to truly stand up to Mayor Rahm, and why? Hey, you come to the city club, you know, wear your trunks around your ankles. You got that one happening. Mark, you can have a second to think. Go ahead.
Zalewski? You got any sleep? I keep waiting for you, big guy.
The fighting 23rd Ward, I doubt it. But go keep going.
Well, I expect. You know, I'm sure he wants to stand up on this TIFs business, so we'll see what he does.
Wagispack and maybe Amir Pawar.
Who's the last one?
Amir Pawar, who won in the Fighting 47th, to the surprise of everyone.
So we have two guys whose names no one can pronounce. Go ahead. Mary.
That's a tough one. I would have to say Bill. And I would say that because there's a lot of contention around police and fire issues. So I said Alderman Bill.
Alderman in the 9th Ward. Okay.
We did have three aldermen, actually. It was John Arena, Rick Munoz, and who was the other one? They voted against the contract at O'Hara. Wagispack. So they probably would expect. And I think Amaya Pawar might do some of that too.
Well, you've already had Alderman Joe Moreno of the 1st Ward rat out Matt Hines for threatening to cut off his access to Mayor Emanuel because he dared to raise an issue about the mayor's human resources chief and some political activity that she had. I think you also have a controversy brewing about the grid system. The aldermen are holding very close to the desire to control streets and sanitation services. They will not give that up easily, and so you might see a Beal or some of the other aldermen stand up on that issue. And then there's also the $66 million aldermanic menu program that the aldermen treasure that probably is either going to be changed or on the chopping block. Again, that is a potential fight for a lot of aldermen.
All right. Well, good answers. We can save money because none of the people you mentioned will need security to walk down Michigan Avenue. All right. They're all heavy hitters.
Come on, Harold Washington supporters are out there threatening. Okay.
Check the election returns, eh, Mary? All right, here we go. Enough of me, though I find that hard to say. Mary Laria from the Forest Preserve. I assume he means Emanuel. Will Rahm be able to break the parking meter contract?
No.
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 3 no, you have the majority, you guys can pass. Okay.
I mean, he's going to come up with some little wrinkle to make it look like he did something.
In that case, a contract is a contract.
Yeah, sometimes they are.
Making this guy sound like Merlin. Okay, Bruce Handler. Bruce, where are you? Cowards die many times before their death, and others face death but once. There he is. There you. I see him. Well, he's hiding there. Okay, here we go. Good question. The mayor's office and CPD, police department, seem to be following in the Rumsfeld footsteps. You know why we have to read this question. Of the lean Afghan military strategy as far as manpower strength for law enforcement, with hundreds retiring and little or no hiring and training of police cadets. What comments do you have regarding citizen safety?
Well, the mayor, this is an area where he's played a bit of a shell game. He promised 1,000 additional officers on the street. He delivered 500 by disbanding the specialized units that were already on the street. They were not on the street on the beat, but they were on the street. So does that really count toward the promise? He also promised to hire 250 officers with TIF money, which may or may not be legal. He hasn't done that yet either. So, and then he's added 250 by pulling them out from behind desks. This is an area where the city has diminished the police resources. We have far fewer police than we've had, and you're going to see that continue to go down because they simply cannot afford to hire them, which cries out for a beat realignment or whatever you want to call it to put the officers that we do have in the areas where the highest crime is. That's something that the mayor will not touch. He says he doesn't want to pit one area of the city against the other, but he will come under increasing pressure to do that as the numbers dwindle.
I think Fran said most of it there. Gary McCarthy, the police chief, I think that's one of the hires that has turned out to be pretty good, pretty popular with the guys on the beat who kind of resented the last guy as not having served as a police officer. This guy has, even though he's from out of town. But I think he's off to an okay start. Given the limited resources that Fran just described, and the way I still do not. One of the things that I think voters would like to see is more officers on the street. I don't know if any of you live in Chicago. Have you seen more officers out there on the street? Are there really guys who used to be behind desks out there on the street? I don't know.
But I think that the mayor's going to handle this in the same way that he's handled a lot of the other issues, and that is he's going to continue to shine the spotlight on what's being done correctly. What's right? Every day there's a new officer who's caught a new criminal, who's caught a shooter, who's caught a robber, who's caught someone who's done some terrible things. Some of the most high-profile incidents in the city have come to, there's been someone arrested for those incidents. So as long as he's able to give people the sense of safety and security, because after all, think about it. We keep seeing reports that say nationally, not just in Chicago, crime has gone down. Serious crime has gone down. That doesn't do anything for the way we feel about crime. So if he can have a police chief who is able to get his men to follow him, at least give the idea, not have all this talk about them rebelling and not wanting to follow the superintendent. If he can get the word out that these crimes are being solved and that he is putting criminals in jail, then I think that he will actually give people the sense of that Chicago is safer today than it was before he took office.
But one thing that sits under all of this are police and fire pensions. As these officers retire, as the numbers dwindle, as there's a question of how many more we can recruit and pay for, we have pension systems in the city of Chicago that are in some big trouble. And so one of the things that doesn't get much discussion, that needs more discussion, is the underfunded or unfunded nature of many of the pensions, not only in Chicago but in the state, but it all affects all of us. And I think that ticking time bomb is a piece of this conversation, though it doesn't seem to be.
I just want to put out that I think that this idea of his of discontinuing the charade of the 1,400 budgeted police positions that they don't really intend to fill, I got no problem with that. I see that caused I guess I was a little embarrassed to realize that every year we were pretending that we were going to spend that money. I somehow that had slipped past me, and I think it's just a natural, logical place to cut.
Okay, we have a question here from Leanne Caston. Leanne, raise your hand. Where are you? All right, Leanne, good question, by the way. Very important in the fight in the 25th Ward. What is Rahm? By the way, notice, 100 days, this is Rahm. What is Rahm going to do, and not about what Rahm and the City Council is going to do? Really good question. What is Rahm going to do about the two coal fire plants in Pilsen and Little Village? That was a big issue in the 25th Ward aldermanic race.
And Rahm backed Denny Solis, who switched his position on those coal fire plants to say that, okay, now he's going to lead the effort to make them cut their coal emissions. So I imagine if Denny Solis is Rahm's guy, that Rahm will back up whatever Denny Solis wants to do with that, right?
So you have to ask yourself, what will the Obama sort of retreat on smog have to do with any of that? And those two coal-fired plants in Pilsen and Little Village, the incidence of childhood asthma is enormous. And the truck traffic that goes through, the emissions that go through are another component of that. If you live in those areas and you have little kids, you have a real reason to worry about what they breathe and the sort of chronic conditions that they will have for a long time. And so it is a public health problem as well as an environmental, overall environmental problem. And didn't one of those companies, Apton, say that they would voluntarily do something to ameliorate their emissions? But I think most of it is still pretty much unresolved.
And so he's supposed to introduce an ordinance, but I don't know if it's due yet.
Well, I think he's going to push the companies to make changes before he pushes for that ordinance to close the plants.
All right. Well, we only have one more question left. And after that, let's make this we'll call this the closing statement. Just like those little debates we used to have here. Closing statement. Here's the topic. 1 year, we'll start with you, Fran. 1 year from today, what will be the number one issue facing Chicago and why? 1 year from today. Mark your calendar.
Well, I mean, it's going to be money. It's going to be money at the schools and money at the city. Money when it comes to attacking the pension problem that Carol talked about, and you have the real challenges with going after the unions, which came up during the campaign. What will he ask of them? Will he ask them to pay more? Will he cut their pay because he does ask them to pay more? Will he delay their retirements and so on? How will he balance the budget? What services will we have to do without? The government cannot sustain itself. We're not going to be able to pay for the services that we have. Is he going to charge for garbage collection? Are we going to get garbage collection once a week? Maybe not. These are the kinds of things, and I mean, the problems will not end with this budget that he introduces on October 15th. The school budget is an enormous problem that's waiting out there. So money will be the issue when it comes to pensions, when it comes to the city budget, when it comes to the school budget, and we just have to wait and see how he's going to tackle that.
Evan.
what Fran said, and also some of what Carol said earlier. I mean, it could be, had Rahm not successfully changed the school strike mechanism in Springfield and basically snookered the teachers union who didn't see it coming and signed off on it, so that they need to get 75% of all members to go for a strike. So even if the school budget situation continues to deteriorate a year from now, we'd be looking at a school strike. It's not going to happen. They're not going to get 75% of all members to vote for it. So we're probably not looking at that. But other unions who are going to be going through what the school board is going through now, we'll see if there's any other strikes we could be looking at. I want to pick up on a point that Carol said about the whole notion of democracy, and one of Rahm's strengths being that he is such an unstoppable locomotive, getting everything done that he wants to get done. And do we need someone, like that who just pushes through all these things? And that's a strength and also weakness. And that back with Mayor Daley, he can make the argument that he governed best early on when he surrounded himself with strong experts who could tell him, Mr. Mayor, that's a bad idea. He listened to him. And is Rahm, one thing we may be talking about a year from now is, does Rahm have people around him who can tell him no, and does he listen to him? Is there some democracy and actually listen to other points of view, or is it just one man's vision on a charging locomotive heading ahead?
Mary.
I think a year from now, we'll still be talking about schools. We'll talk about CPS. We'll talk about how the improvement in school, what that's going to look like. We're going to be talking more about charter schools because Mayor Rahm was a big fan of charter schools, and I think that right now, schools are at a crossroads. That was a big part of his campaign, improving Chicago public schools, and I don't think they're anywhere near solving how teachers are going to get paid, how the day is going to get longer, and how student progress is going to improve. So I think we'll still be talking a lot about schools.
Carol.
One word, taxes. I think we will be talking about taxes and what new taxes will have to be raised in order to pay for what we currently cannot pay for.
Mark.
A year from now, the problems will all be the same: schools, crime, city finances, and Rahm will have the benefit that there'll be a presidential election looming all over it, with the economy as the #1 issue, and maybe he'll be able to just not get much attention for a few months.
Before we give a big round of applause, we have one of the River Awards just came in. Those of you who've been around for a while, they know what the River Awards are, and it's not filled with people drinking. And now it is, but in the old days, they didn't know about Starbucks. They knew about the second half of it. All right, here you have one word answer, yes or no. This is from Carol Bell. Carol, you're not a member of the City Club. After changing the rules, which, as you know, was very difficult for me, you should join the City Club. Get that $50 on the line. Here's the question. Do you think Mayor Rahm Emanuel cares more about Chicago or the rise of his political career? Hey. We can't put him on the spot. What can we do?
I think they're tied together,
I'd say yes and yes.
That sounds good.
Ditto.
I agree, Frank.
What a bunch of wimps. All right, how about a big round of applause?